The CFPB is doing outstanding work. It's put $17.5 billion back in Americans' pockets. It's provided $4 billion to the Victims Relief Fund. It deals with 3,000 complaints it receives every day. Many members of the committee are well aware of those statistics. What you may not be aware of is that on November 8th of last year, it ordered Citibank to pay almost $26 million in fines for intentionally and illegally discriminating against Armenian Americans. And for those of you who do not have an Armenian American community in your district, it is particularly easy to discriminate against Armenian Americans because the vast majority of names end in IAN or YAN of the Armenian American community. But it's not just what was done with the $26 million or the $4 billion or the $17.5 billion. That's the tip of the iceberg, because when the CFPB acts, it deters bad actors from doing these things on a much larger scale. We're told that the CFPB doesn't testify enough. Their director comes before us at least twice a year, usually more often. We're told that the funding mechanism is constitutionally impaired. Professor, I think you did an excellent job explaining what it's not, but let me just address that. It is the same funding mechanism exactly that the Fed uses. And if the Supreme Court really wants to cause a tailspin for our economy and shake it to its fundamental roots, it would rule that the Fed is unconstitutional in some respect. I'm confident the Supreme Court will not do that. The existence of police does not mean that our citizenry is criminal, and the existence of a policing consumer transactions is not anti-capitalist propaganda. There is one piece of of legislation before us that's noticed for this hearing, and that is one HJRES 122, which is designed to invalidate the rule to reduce the charge for late credit card fees. Well, who amongst us has not sent in our payment late? And why should that fee be all they can get from us rather than something related to the bank's costs? Now, I remember when credit cards were embossed and carbonized paper was used, and the cost of processing transactions was high. Certainly, the bank can deal with the fact that a payment is late for $8, probably less. But focusing on that issue, Professor, 28 members joined in a letter I wrote dealing with the exact date. If the date that your credit card payment is due on April 30th, say, some banks say it's got to be in by 5 p.m. Eastern time. Now, that makes sense if you're paying by mail, but so many people pay electronically. Is it fair to people who live in the Pacific time zone, let alone Hawaii or Alaska, for them to get statements that say, oh, you're on time if you get your money in by April 30th, and they get their money in electronically at 4 p.m. California time? These are banks that have hundreds of thousands of customers in my time zone, and yet somebody pays electronically at 4 p.m. on the due date, and they get hit with what is now a $36 fee, what under the CFPB rule would be an $8 fee. Shouldn't banks that operate with hundreds of thousands of cars in the West Coast time zone have their computers on past 5 p.m. East Coast time?
Well, Representative, I certainly agree with that. Our banks should be.
Oh, by the way, this applies to Utah. You're just one.
I was thinking the exact
time
same
zone
thing.
over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no. Look, if there might be something in the contract that is some details in there where they use that as the predicate for allowing that as a matter of contract law, but it's not good policy. It's not neighborly of the bank. If you say that's the due date, you should get all the way up until midnight, and everybody in the country should be treated the same way.
I would agree for electronic payments. And back in the day when it was postal, one understands that there's only an afternoon mail delivery. But today, the computers can be on till midnight. I yield back.
Gentleman